Hello, everyone. Wishing you all a very good afternoon. I hope all of you are fit, fine, safe, healthy, and happy as always. And I welcome you to the physics class. Am I audible and visible to all of you? Can you hear me? Can you listen to me? Can I have some raise hand that we understand this, sir? Someone can raise hand. Okay, Brijesh. So I think I am audible and visible. I think everyone has come. Can see some new people, some old ones. Okay. As suggested, we'll try to finish the remaining part of this chapter. We'll be dealing with collisions in this chapter, and we'll be dealing with that formula I told you, whether you have read about any general formula and all that, and I'll tell you my my variation of it. Now, before going on to that, let us have a quick walk through the terms that we are going to use. The first one that we are going to use is impulse. Have you heard about the term impulse? Impulse of a force acting on the body for time interval 2. I is integral of f dt from t1 to t2. I hope you must know this. This impulse can also be written as integral of m into dv. M comes out, so impulse is nothing but change in momentum. The impulse acting on a particle in simple forms can be written as change in momentum, and this theorem is known as the impulse momentum theorem. Do you understand this impulse momentum theorem? Now, this impulse momentum theorem, I always call this as the mother theorem. Momentum theorem is known as the mother theorem. And then it has a daughter theorem. I hope you understand the meaning of mother and daughter. Mother comes first, the daughter comes afterward. The daughter theorem. The daughter theorem is law of conservation of linear momentum. That is what I call the daughter theorem. Law of conservation of linear momentum. LOCM. Law of conservation of linear momentum. Why do I call one as mother and the other one as daughter? Because here in mother theorem, which is the impulse momentum theorem, if there is an impulse, the momentum will change. A special case of this would be a special case of this would be if impulse is zero. That is a special case. If impulse is zero, then I can say that change in momentum would be zero. If impulse is zero, then the change in momentum will zero, and that becomes your law of conservation of linear momentum. So whatever question you can do with law of conservation of linear momentum can also be done by the impulse momentum theorem, but there can be questions which cannot be done by law of conservation of linear momentum. They have to be done by impulse momentum theorem. Wherever there is an impulse and momentum is not getting conserved, then law of conservation of linear momentum cannot be applied. We have to apply the original law, and the original law or the mother theorem is impulse momentum theorem. Do you all understand this? Can I have this? Can I have raised hands that we understand this, sir? Impulse momentum theorem can be applied everywhere, but law of conservation of linear momentum can only be applied if impulse is zero. Now we have the rotational analog of this. Remember, whatever we have studied in translational motion, the same thing will be there in rotational motion. We'll call it the rotational analog. For example, the rotational analog of displacement is angular displacement. In translational motion, we have displacement. In rotational motion, we have angular displacement. In translational motion, we have velocity, rotational angular velocity. Acceleration, angular acceleration. Mass is the transitional analog. What is the rotational analog of mass? What do we use in place of mass in rotation? Mass is, we also call it inertia. Inertia is the property of a body. Mass is the property of the body by virtue of which it opposes change in its translational motion. Remember, mass is the inertia. Mass is inertia, and it is the property of a body by virtue of which it tries to oppose the change in its translational motion. The rotational analog is moment of inertia. Moment of inertia is the property of a body by virtue of which it opposes any change in its rotational motion. So mass has in moment of inertia force, rotational analog is torque, linear momentum, the rotational analog is angular momentum. So we'll have this impulse momentum theorem. We have impulse momentum theorem in translational motion. In rotational motion, this impulse momentum theorem will have its analog. What will be the analog of impulse momentum theorem in rotational motion? It will be known as rotational impulse or angular impulse, if you call it angular impulse, angular momentum theorem. If there is no angular impulse, no rotational impulse, then the angular momentum of the body will remain constant. Do we understand this? Do you understand this? Can I have some reason that you understand this, sir? So that will be the rotational analog of this. Then we'll have law of conservation of angular momentum. We'll have law of conservation of angular momentum. If angular impulse or torque acting on a body is zero, if angular impulse or torque acting on a body is zero, the momentum, the angular momentum of the body will remain conserved. That will be known as LOCAM, law of conservation of angular momentum, LOCAM. So whenever you are doing impulse momentum theorem, you're also doing angular impulse, angular momentum theorem. Do we understand the LOCAM, law of conservation of angular momentum? Can I move forward with this? Simple question. Since it is the integral, if I draw a graph between f and time or torque and time, the area under this graph will give you impulse or angular impulse depending on whether you have drawn force or torque. What are the important points about this? I think you all know this. It is a vector quantity. The direction is changes, same as change in momentum. Magnitude is the area under the graph. Now, to understand this, we'll do questions in impulsive forces for impulse. Now, what is an impulsive force? What is an impulsive force? Have you heard this term impulsive force? Now, remember, if you talk theoretically, all forces are impulsive forces because whenever you apply a force for any time, it will create an impulse. But whenever we are talking about impulsive force in this scenario, we are talking about a very special type of a force. A very special type of a force, which is impulsive force, which is of a very high magnitude acting for a very short time. So for a force of very large magnitude acts for a very small time, that force is called as impulsive force. What is this impulsive force going to do? It will going to change the momentum of a body in a very short time. Example of an impulsive force, you must see a bat hitting a ball. A bat hitting a ball is an impulsive force acting on the bat and the ball. Ball is coming with a certain momentum in a certain direction. When you hit it with a bat, the momentum changes. The time which the bat remains in contact with the ball is very less. So a very large force ka magnitude is acting on for a very short time. That force is known as impulsive force. Usually all colliding forces, whenever there is a collision, now you must understand the meaning of collision. Collision means whenever two bodies are interacting with each other, whenever they are exerting forces on each other, we can call this as collision. But collision, in this case, what it means is whenever two bodies are colliding or interacting with each other such that the momentum of at least one body changes drastically, at least one body, the momentum changes drastically, then we call such interaction as collision. Moon, Earth and Moon. Moon is moving around Earth. Moon is moving around Earth. Earth is exerting force on Moon. Is this a collision? Is this a collision between Earth and Moon? Yes, this is a collision between Earth and Moon, but the momentum is not changing drastically. Whenever you have one body exerting force on the other body, whether they are in contact or not, whether they are away from each other, if they are exerting force on each other, they are exerting impulses on each other, that is a collision. But when we use the word collision specifically, we refer to a special type of this collision where the momentum changes very drastically, and where large forces act for a very small interval of time. Do we understand this? Can I have raised hand that we understand this, sir? Now, important point about impulsive forces: gravitational forces and spring forces are always impulsive. Normal tension and friction, you must understand when they are impulsive and when they are not. Sometimes they can be impulsive, sometimes they can be non-impulsive. An impulsive force can only be balanced by an impulsive force, another impulsive force. If there is an impulsive force acting on a body, to balance that impulsive force, you need another impulsive force. Impulsive force cannot be balanced by a gravitational force. An impulsive force cannot be balanced by spring force, because spring and gravitational forces are non-impulsive. Now see here, these two bodies are colliding. Body 1 is colliding with body 2. Now you can see there are 4 different normal reactions. Normal reaction N1, normal reaction N1G, normal reaction N1 acting on this, normal reaction N2G acting on this body from ground. So both the bodies are having normal reaction from ground. Both the bodies are having normal reaction on each other, and they are colliding with each other. Which forces are impulsive here? Gravitational force is not impulsive. So this is not impulsive. This is not impulsive. These two normal reactions are acting in the upward direction, but collision is happening in the horizontal direction. Upward direction is perpendicular to horizontal direction. It does not have any effect, and therefore these two normal reactions are not impulsive. The only impulsive forces here are normal reaction on this body M1 and normal reaction exerted by M1 on M2. These are the two impulsive forces acting on these two bodies. Can I have some reason that we understand this, sir? Similarly here, two bodies are colliding. You can easily find out what are the impulsive forces. Both the normal forces are impulsive. The upper body, which exerts force on the lower body, that is impulsive. Ground, which exerts force on the lower body, is also impulsive. Here, look at this diagram. N1 are the impulsive forces between the two bodies, is the normal reaction between the two colliding spheres. This is impulsive. The lower wala sphere ka normal reaction. See, this bigger sphere is going to press this smaller sphere against ground. So ground must oppose it, and therefore this normal reaction is impulsive. But normal reaction N2, smaller sphere is pushing it upwards. It can always move upwards. There is nothing stopping it from moving upwards, and therefore N2 is non-impulsive. Do we understand this? So this is the way we can find out which forces are impulsive and which forces are non-impulsive. What about friction? How do we find out whether friction is impulsive or not? The simple principle is, if the normal force between the two objects is impulsive, then the friction will be also impulsive. So whenever two objects are colliding and the normal force is impulsive, then friction is also impulsive. Do we understand this? Do we understand this? Can I move forward? Can I move forward? Similarly, for tensions also you can find out which tension is impulsive and which tension is not impulsive. I'll just give an example because this question can come in the exam. This is one sphere. Tension is T. Now you can see in which cases tension T is impulsive. When object is hitting it in the direction of A, it will try to move downwards. The bigger sphere will try to move downwards, but this string will keep it tight, and hence T becomes impulsive in this case. When it hits it from the horizontal direction, this is free to move in this direction. Tension will not stop it, and hence tension is impulsive. Tension is non-impulsive. When it hits in the direction C, again it will try to move upwards. Tension will not stop it from going upwards, and hence tension is non-impulsive in this case. So in this case, only one tension, in only one case, tension will be impulsive, and that will be ball A striking this bob. Do we understand this? Can I have some reason that we understand this? Do we understand this? So this is how you find which case what is impulsive, and this is a very famous question that comes. I think this is a question taken from S.C. Verma. This is a question that is given in the solved part of S.C. Verma. A block of mass small m and a pan of equal mass are connected by a string going over a smooth pulley. So this is M, this is also M. Initially the system is at rest. A particle of mass small m falls on the pan and sticks to it. It strikes the pan with a velocity v. So this is striking the pan with a velocity v, as you can see. Find the speed with which the system moves after collision. So to find the speed or velocity of the system, this pan on the left hand side will go down, mass on the right hand side will go up. With what velocities they go up, that is what you have to find out. Can you do this for me, everyone? Can you do this for me? Can you try this one? Are you trying? Anyone? How will you do this? Anyone has any idea? Would like to say anything about this question? Okay. No one has any idea? Shall I do it for you? How are we supposed to do any question of this type? Give you 1 more minute till I just get this thing arranged. Do you see this, everyone? My whiteboard? Is my whiteboard visible to everyone? How are we going to solve this? Okay. Okay. Have a quick look at this. Draw a diagram. This is my pulley. This is my pan. And this is my mass. This is M. This is M. And this one strikes it with a velocity v. This is before collision what was happening. Now let me draw the impulses here. Now since this block M is going to stick to the pan, this pan will try to move down. This pan will try to move down. Right? Now there will be an impulsive force. There will be an impulsive force between the particle and the pan. The particle and the pan. Now let me draw the diagram of the particle. Let me draw the diagram of the particle. This is the diagram of the particle M, and it was moving with a velocity v. Now look at it very, very close. It might take some time, but please pay attention. Now the particle is going to strike the pan. In which direction will the pan apply impulse on the particle? In which direction will the pan apply impulse on the particle? Obviously, it will be in the upward direction. Yes or no? Yes or no? It will be in the upward direction, right? J1. Okay. Now, what will happen to the pan in the system when the particle strikes the pan will move down. Let us assume that it moves down with a velocity u. The system will move down with a velocity u, and this will come up with a velocity u. Do we understand this? This thing, left hand side will come down with velocity u, right hand side will come up with a velocity u. Do we understand this? Yes or no? So, if you're talking about the mass m, before collision its velocity was v, after collision its velocity is u in the same direction. Do we understand this? Do we understand this? Before collision its velocity was v, after collision its velocity is u in the same direction. Now let us talk about the pan. What are the forces acting on the pan? So I'll draw the diagram of the pan. This is my pan. Mass is m. What are the forces acting on the pan m? One is this impulse J1, which is because of force exerted by small m. But But we look here. When this tries to move down, the string will try to oppose it and it will try to pull it upwards. So it will exert an impulse, J2. So J2 is the impulse exerted by string on pan M. String on pan M. So this is J2. This is J2. J2 is in the upward direction, J1 is in the downward direction now. Before collision, its velocity is 0. So this velocity is 0. After collision, it will move down with a velocity u. Do we understand this up till here? Is the question clear to everyone? Can I have some raise hand that we are clear up till this point? Look at the third one. The third body. Third body is here, mass m. Okay. Now, once the pan is struck by that particle, this will move upwards and it will obviously move upwards because of this jerk J2 exerted by the string. So the impulse acting on it is J2. There is no impulse in the downward direction because weight is not treated as an impulsive force. Before collision, its velocity was 0. So blue velocity is 0. After collision, its velocity is u in the upward direction. Do we understand this? Is everyone clear with what I have drawn here? I've used different colors so that you understand what is what. Can I have some reason that you understand this? Now remember, my sign convention. My sign convention, upwards is positive, downwards is negative. Upwards is positive, downwards is negative. I apply impulse momentum theorem on this particle. I apply impulse momentum theorem on this particle. Can you tell me what is the impulse momentum theorem applied on this particle? How will I look like? So total impulse, which is J1, which is positive J1, because it is in the positive direction, will be equal to change in momentum. Change in momentum. What is the change in momentum? What is the change in momentum? Change in momentum is final momentum. Final momentum is minus mu. Why it is minus? Because it is downwards. Minus initial momentum. What is the initial momentum? It's m into v, but it is also in the downward direction. So it is minus mv. Do we understand this first equation? Do we understand this first equation? Very nicely said. Very nicely put. Do we get this first equation? Can I have some reason that you understand this, sir? Now, if this is the first equation from the first body, can you make the impulse momentum theorem for this one? Can you make the impulse momentum theorem for this one? Can you make the impulse momentum theorem for this one? Impulse is change in momentum. Can you apply it on this? Can you apply it on this? This body. Anyone can apply this on this body. On body 2. If you can do this question, you can do any question that comes on impulse. So impulse is change in momentum. What is the impulse acting on this? J2 in the upward direction. Second body beta. Rajesh, this one. This body we are talking about. J2. J2 is in the upward direction. Minus J1. J1 is in the downward direction. That is why minus J1 should be equal to final momentum, which is minus mu minus initial momentum, which is 0. Do you understand this? Do you understand equation number 2? Do you have an understanding of equation number 2? Do we have an understanding of equation number 2? Vijay says his hands. Great. Can you now apply the same impulse momentum theorem to equation number 3? Equation number 3. This one. The last one. The last one. The last one. It's very simple. J2 momentum, positive momentum, will be equal to final momentum, which is mu, minus initial momentum, which is 0. From this equation number 1, 2, and 3, what do? You have to find the value of V. How do you do it? You add these two equations, 1 and 2, and subtract the third equation. and you get your answers, and your answer would be final velocity u will be equal to v by 3. That is what you will get. Do we understand how I applied this impulse momentum theorem on this particle or this system of particles? Do we understand this? Okay. So that is the beauty of impulse momentum theorem. You can apply this wherever you feel confident. You don't have to look for law of conservation of momentum. Law of conservation of momentum is already inside this equation. If you apply this equation, that means you have applied law of conservation of momentum if it is anywhere to be applied. Can you move forward ahead? Have you understood the concept of impulse and momentum? Let me take the thing forward. Again, this is a very simple example of a similar question, but here it is kept like this. I think you can always do it. Same question, but it is on the horizontal ground, and I think the answer is also same. The answer is same as u by 3. From there, you can find the impulse of tension, impulse of normal, and everything else. Everything else can be found out using the equation of impulse. Are we ready? Then that brings us to the last topic of this chapter, which is known as collision or impact. Now, collision or impact here is defined in this fashion, is an event in which impulsive force acts. So we'll only call those events or those influences or those interactions as collision where impulsive forces are acting. In a collision, particles may or may not come in physical contact. The time of collision is very small, and the effect of non-impulsive forces are not taken into account. In fact, a very good definition of collision is it is a redistribution of total momentum. Have you heard this definition? It is a redistribution of it's a redistribution of linear momentum. Okay, now this collision can be of various types. I don't know whether you have heard this type, eccentric and non-eccentric. Have you heard about this type of collision? Have you heard about this type of collision, eccentric and non-eccentric? Eccentric means when the bodies are colliding, their velocities are along their center of masses. Now, when, for example, a ball is colliding with a ball such that the motion is along their center of masses, what happens? This ball just has translational motion. When this ball collides with a rod which is kept here, something collides with a rod. If it collides on its center of mass, the rod will just move translationally. But if it collides somewhere else, the rod will rotate and also move. So it will be a combined motion of rotation as well as translation. That is known as eccentric collision, where the body rotates as well as translates. What we are doing here is non-eccentric. The body only moves. Do we understand this? So the body only translates. In rotational, we will see another type of collision which is known as eccentric collision, where one body or maybe two bodies will move translationally as well as rotate also after collision. That is why that collision becomes very tough to understand. Even though as such collision is tough to understand. Now we can again classify this collision according to the line of impact. Do you know the line of impact? The line of impact is the common normal to the surface. Have you heard about this line of impact? Whenever two bodies are colliding, you draw a common normal. That common normal is known as line of impact. Do we understand this? So according to the line of impact, depending on the line of impact, we can have head-on collision, which is known as collision in 1D, or oblique collision, which is known as collision in 2D. On the basis of energy, we have elastic and inelastic collision. I am sure you know what is elastic. You have perfectly inelastic or perfectly elastic. I hope you know the relation between them. E, I hope you know the meaning of E. For a perfectly elastic collision, the value of E is 1. For a perfectly inelastic collision, the value of E is 0. For an inelastic collision, the value of E lies between 0 and 1. Do we know this? Can I move forward? Can I have some reason that we know this, sir? E is known as coefficient of restitution. Okay. Now, this is an example of head-on collision or collision in 1D. This is an example of oblique collision or collision in 2D. This is again an example of oblique collision or collision in 2D. Coefficient of restitution. What is the definition of this coefficient of restitution? It is the impulse of reformation divided by impulse of deformation. This is the actual definition. What is deformation? What is reformation? I told you when two bodies are colliding, first they are in their original shapes. Then the पीछे वाला body strikes the आगे वाला body and they start to deform. आगे वाला body का velocity increases, पीछे वाले body का velocity decreases. It keeps on decreasing. They keep on getting deformed. At one instant, they come into the state of maximum deformation. They get maximum deformation. Up till this point, they are getting deformed. So that is known as impulse of deformation. The impulse acting on this body is known as impulse of deformation. After this point, what happens? आगे वाले का velocity becomes more, पीछे वाले का velocity becomes very less. So they start to separate from each other. They start to come back to their original size, shape, and configuration. They start to reform. If they reform completely, if they acquire their original shape completely, it becomes a perfectly elastic collision. If they remain in the maximum deformed state, it is known as a perfectly inelastic collision. If they lie somewhere in between, it is known as inelastic collision. The value of E varies from 0 to 1. 0 for perfectly inelastic collision, 1 for perfectly elastic collision. Do we understand this? Can I have some raised hands? That we understand this, sir. Coefficient of restitution, we can have a formula which is velocity of separation along the line of impact. So basically we can write it like this: V2 minus V1 divided by U1 minus U2. Do we understand this? Yes or no? You have this formula. Do you understand this? This is the impulse of deformation. This is the impulse of reformation. When you apply this formula, you will get V2 minus V1 divided by U1 minus U2. Velocity of separation along the line of impact divided by velocity of approach along the line of impact. This is always applied along the line of impact. Will you remember that? Line of impact, LOI. Value of E is always used along the line of impact because it is impulse of the reformation divided by impulse of deformation, and impulse only act along the line of impact. Do we remember this? E is 1 for perfectly elastic, E is 0 for perfectly inelastic, E is between 0 and 1. Please remember this. Please remember this. Will you remember this? Will you remember this? Please raise your hands that, sir, we will remember this. Not a problem, sir. We will remember this. Can I have that, what should I say, confirmation from you that you will remember this? What will you remember? What is the value of E? V2 minus V1 divided by U1 minus U2. That is the first thing. Impulse of reformation divided by impulse of deformation. Now look at this particular case. This is the simplest possible case of two bodies colliding head-on. Two bodies colliding head-on. M1 is the पीछे वाला body का mass moving with a velocity U1. M2 is the आगे वाली velocity का आगे वाले particle velocity. Mass is M2. This is after collision. Mass M1 moves with a velocity V1. Mass M2 moves with a velocity V2. Do we understand this? The value of E is given as E. So basically, we are trying to devise a formula Basically, we are trying to devise a formula where we can apply this formula for any value of E, whether the value of E is 0 or the value of E is 1 or the value of E lies between 0 and 1. What is the formula? The formula given in this notes is this one. If you want, you can write this. I think I have sent you this note. Yes or no? Have you got these notes with you? Have you got these notes with you? Have you? Am I asking? Have you got these notes with you? Yes. Now, as I can see, if you can remember this formula in this way, it's well and good. If you can't, I have my own version of this. I have my own version of this formula which I have created, and this formula looks like this. V1, which is the final velocity of body 1, will be equal to 1 plus E times VCM minus E times U1. V2 is 1 plus E times VCM minus E times U2. I always find this formula way too easy to remember rather than the original one. Which one do you find easy to remember? Now, what is VCM? VCM is the velocity of center of mass before collision, or VCM is the velocity of center of mass after collision. How will you find the value of this VCM? How will you find the value of this VCM? This VCM is simply M1 U1 plus M2 U2 with signs divided by M1 plus M2. Do we understand this? You find the velocity of center of mass, and then you can use this formula straight away without any hassles. And I'm sure that you will reap a lot of benefits from this formula. This is easier to remember than the formula that is given in the notes. Do we understand this? Do we understand this? Do we understand this? Now see, now you can do some special cases here, and these special cases become more simpler to understand. If E is 0 for a perfectly inelastic collision, put the value of E as 0, you'll get the value of V1. V1 will be VCM and V2 will also be VCM. So V1 becomes equal to V2. Do we understand this? Can I have some raise hand that we understand this, sir? No problems with this one. This is very damn clear. Now, if E is equal to 1, this is one case, and M1 is equal to M2 is equal to M, that means both the bodies are of the same mass and the collision is perfectly elastic. Same mass, perfectly elastic collision, you will get V1 as U2 and V2 as U1. You can easily see it from the formula that I have created. Put the value of VCM, you will get V1 is equal to U2 and U2 is equal to V1. That means when two particles of equal mass collide elastically and the collision is head-on, they exchange their velocities. Two bodies of same mass collide with each other. Collision is head-on. Collision is perfectly elastic. Before collision, this body is moving with velocity 4 meters per second. This body is moving with velocity 3 meters per second. After collision, what will happen? They will interchange their velocities. Have you seen that? Do you understand this? Can I have some reason that we understand this, sir? Can I have some reason that we understand this, sir? What have we understood here? What have we understood here? That they change their velocities after collision. Same example here. Initially, this body of mass M is moving with a velocity of 2 meters per second. The other body is at rest. After collision, what happens? This body comes to rest. The other one moves with a velocity 2 meters per second. One more very important formula, one more very important case that will come to you. M1 is very, very large compared to M2. So basically, it is the case where M1 becomes a wall and M2 becomes a ball. Or M1 becomes a truck and M2 becomes a ball. Do we understand this case? M1 is a truck very big truck, or M1 is a ball colliding with a truck. If a ball collides with a truck, the velocity of truck will not change. It will change very, very minutely. We cannot find out how much it has changed. So if a ball collides with a truck, or a ball collides with a wall, the velocity of wall or the truck does not change. What happens to the velocity of the ball? It changes in this fashion. It will be coming same as this one. You can always use the formula that I have given. This is very easy for you to use. When you use it, you will understand its significance. When you use it, you will understand its significance. And to understand that significance, this is the question that I gave you. First one, this can be given straight away. This is moving with 2 meters per second. This is moving with 4 meters per second. This collision is perfectly elastic. What are the two velocities after collision? You don't have to apply law of conservation of momentum. You don't have to apply law of conservation of energy. You can straight away give the answer. And what is the answer for this case? What is the answer for this case? What will be the velocities after collision? Remember, both are same mass and the collision is perfectly elastic. So what will happen? Yes, they will interchange their velocities. As you can see, they have interchanged their velocities. Do we understand this? Can I have raised hand that we understand this, sir? Can I have raised hand that we understand this, sir? Now, this one, 3 balls A and B and C of same mass are placed on a frictionless horizontal surface. Ball A is moved with velocity u to the middle ball B. Follow the collision elastic. Find the final velocity of all the balls. Fatafat, give me the answer. What is the final velocity of all the balls? Initially, ball A is moving with a velocity 1. Secant. So this one will be 0. This one will be 0. And this one will be u. We understand this, right? Interchange of velocity, nothing else. Interchange of velocity, nothing else. This one. 4 identical balls A, B, C, D are placed in a line on a frictionless surface. A and D are moved with same velocity u towards the middle one. Assuming perfect collision, find the final velocities. Tell me the final velocities. What happens next? What happens finally? These are the type of questions you can expect in the exam. JEE mains or advanced. Simple topic, simple base. What are the answers, beta? What are the answers? If the answer is this one, D moves towards right with you and A moves towards left, you are absolutely right. Do we understand this? Do we understand this? Can I move forward? Okay. Now the masses have become different. Now can you get me the answer? Two particles M and 2M are moved in opposite direction on a frictionless surface, collide elastically with velocity V and 2V respectively. Find their velocities after collision. Also find the fraction of kinetic energy lost. Now, fraction of kinetic energy lost, you can always remember this formula. You may not find it elsewhere. So please remember this formula. Change in kinetic energy is minus mu by 2 U relative squared 1 minus E squared. This is the formula that I have derived. Now you would be asking, sir, what is mu? What is mu here? What is mu here? Mu is the reduced mass of the system. Mu is M1, M2 divided by M1 plus M2. You remember this reduced mass somewhere? Reduced mass. U relative is U1 minus U2. You can take U1 minus U2, the relative velocity of 1 with respect to 2, or 2 with respect to 1, U2 minus U1. So you square it, and whatever you get, minus mu by 2, U relative square, 1 minus E square. This is the formula that you must remember. If you can't remember this formula, you can always find the final kinetic energy of all the particles, find the initial kinetic energy of all the particles, subtract that 2 and you will get the answer. Do you understand this? Can I have some reason that we understand this, sir? Do we understand this? Can I have some raise hand that we understand this, sir? If you cannot remember this formula, I have put it in the best possible way, using as little terms as possible so that it becomes easier for you to understand it. Do I have some understanding on the other side of the screen? Do you understand what I'm saying here? Can I have some raise hand that we understand this, sir? Okay, great. What about the answer for this one? What will be the final velocities after this collision? I'll tell you how to solve it. Let me call this as particle 1. Let me call this as particle 2. Let us first find the velocity of center of mass of this system. Before collision or after collision, it remains same because momentum is always conserved. It has a moment of, it has a momentum plus 2 mv. This has minus 2 mv, plus mv, minus 2 mv. The velocity of center of mass becomes 0. Yes or no? Yes or no? Please tell me yes or no. The velocity of center of mass is 0. Yes or no? Then I can simply apply the formula. V1 is 1 plus E times V2. 1 plus E times VCM minus E times U1. This thing becomes 0. V1 becomes minus E. E is 1. E is 1 here because this is perfectly elastic collision. So it becomes minus of U1. So it will turn back with the same velocity, same speed. How do I get the value of V2? V2 will be 1 plus E times VCM minus E times U2. This becomes 0 because velocity of center of mass is 0. So V2 becomes, E becomes 1 minus U2. So it turns back with the same velocity back, and you can check your answers from here. See, they have done it after so many steps. I gave you the answer straight away. Yes or no? Do you understand how I've done this? Do you understand the beauty of the equation that I've given you? Do you understand the beauty of the equation I have given you? This one. Where was that? Do you understand the beauty of this equation? You don't have to apply law of conservation of momentum. You don't have to apply any energy conservation. You don't have to apply the value of E. E is V1 minus V2 divided by V2. Nothing you have to do. Just put the values, get the answer, stay happy. Do we understand this? Do we understand the value of this equation that I have given it to you? Okay. Okay, I hope you realize it. I hope you realize that you have hit upon a jackpot. You hit upon a jackpot. And here is one question. If you can use this, if you can get this, I would be pretty happy. On a frictionless surface, a ball of mass m moving with a speed v makes a head-on collision with an identical ball at rest. The kinetic energy of the balls after the collision is 3/4 of the original. Find the coefficient of restitution. K final is 4 times 3/4 times of K initial. Find the value of E. How will you get it? Anyone with an answer? Anyone with an answer? I will be very happy. No one? Shall I do it? Now again, obviously you can do it by law of conservation of momentum, then the value of E in everything you put, and you get the values of every damn thing. You get it more easily. How? If you remember what I've told you here, you can apply this one. You will get your answer in a flash. Just in a flash, you will get your answer. See, I'll try to apply it here and show you the beauty of the other equation that I was talking. See, they have done so many things and the answer is 1 by root 2, and see how will I get it now. Delta Ke is equal to minus mu. It's important for me to solve one question for you so that you can replicate the same if it comes in your exam. 1 by mu by 2, mu relative square multiplied by 1 minus E square. Do you understand this? Change in kinetic energy. Change in kinetic energy. That is how you will get it. Now, how will you get the kinetic energy of the balls after the collision? Is 3/4 of the original. So what? How much is the change? 3/4 minus initial. So it is minus 1 by 4 of the initial kinetic energy. Minus 1 by 4 of the initial kinetic energy. Can I have some raise hand that we understand this? Minus 1 by 4 of the initial kinetic energy. Raise hand will give me more confidence. Change in kinetic energy. Final kinetic energy is 3 by 4. Initial kinetic energy is K. So change is minus 1 by 4 K. K is half mv square. Initial kinetic energy is half mv square. Do we have raise hand? Raise hand gives me more confidence. Is equal to mu. Now this mu is m1 m2 divided by m1 plus m2. m1 m2 is m square divided by m1 plus m2 is 2m. M square divided by 2m. M square divided by 2m becomes m by 2 minus m by 2. One more 2 here. So 2 into 2. Mu relative. One velocity is v, other velocity is 0. So relative velocity becomes v. V ka square becomes v squared. So far so good. 1 minus e squared. So far so good. And voila, you got your answer. Solve this equation, you'll get your answer as 1 by 2. Yes or no? Yes or no? Anyone got it? This goes, this goes, this goes, this goes, this goes, this goes. Tung, 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 and you'll get your answer. Am I clear? How did I get this? So if you can remember these two formulae for collision, I'm sure you can do any problem that comes. More often or not, that problem will be based on on one-dimensional collision, because if it becomes an oblique collision, cases just become too many. I can make a similar formula for 2D collision, but whenever there's a 2D collision, sometimes there are more impulsive forces acting from other places, and that is why it's not very easy to make a formula for oblique collision. But I have given you two lifesaver formula for this, and any question in 1D collision can be done directly. What are the two formulas? Let us again have a look at them. These are your SOS formulae. This is formula number 1. Change in kinetic energy after collision, 1D collision, minus mu by 2, u relative square, 1 minus e square. Mu is reduced mass, m1, m2 upon m1 plus m2. U relative is the relative velocity before collision, u1 minus u2 ka whole square. And the gem of all these formulae is my variation of collision in one dimension, and this is the formula that I have created. All my knowledge, I've used it, and it is absolutely brilliant to use. I hope once you use it, you will be able to find its importance. That is all about collision. Now you can have a discussion on collision in 2 dimensions, but again, if that question comes for a, you can have a question of this nature that is more likely to come. If you have a question based on collision in 2D, then probably it will more be a problem of theoretical base. He'll ask you along which direction you can conserve momentum, along which direction is the forces acting, what will be the velocity along what direction. It will be more based on that rather than an actual question on oblique collision. You can have a question of this sort, which is a very famous question. This ball hits the ground, and at what angle it rebounds back. You must know that it rebounds back at tan beta is tan alpha by E. You must be knowing by now. If it's an elastic collision, it comes and strikes at the same angle. Law of reflection, it becomes. So these are the questions that can come. To solve a question of this nature, it will, even if I tell you the shortest way, it will take some time for you to do it. And this is the best way to solve it. Just make a table like this. But again, it will take some time for you to do it. So I will not go into that, because that that might not be a good utilization of the time. And I would not suggest that if such a question comes, you must try it. The only question that you can try is when it comes along 1D motion, or it is a question of this nature where you just have to get the value of E from here. So velocity of separation along the line of impact, LOI, or the velocity of divided by velocity of approach along LOI. So if the question is of this nature, then probably you can try this. Otherwise, there is no point on you trying this. Again, if a question is a collision with wall, probably you can try it. If it is not collision with a wall, is this something else? It becomes very tough for you to call it. So there are many problems that I've given here. I would ask you to see if they want you to do it. Variable mass system, you can just skip it for now. If it comes, they will probably give you the theory of this. There is an equation which is known as Meszkowski equation. I think Meszkowski equation is not here. Meszkowski equation is not given here. I'll give you in the next class if you want it. So any question, there are only 3 questions, and all these 3 questions are taken from Herodov. 2 or 3 questions are there in the Herodov. If you can do 2 or 3 questions, you will be good enough. This is also taken from Herodov, and everything is just application of the Meszkowski equation. This is variable mass applied in rocket propulsion. The only thing that changes is we have a value of G also coming here. So this G wala term also comes here. Otherwise, the concept is same. This you can do this question, your chain of mass. But again, if such a question comes, you see a chain directly that is falling. If the question based on energy, you have to find the velocity which it is falling. That is, you can try. If it is something else, you are asked to find out the force. Skip that question. Skip that question, because you won't be able to do it in that time, and you will be wasting time for other questions as well. So on that note, I think I have done what I was supposed to do. I've given you the sheet. The theory sheet is also there with you. The problem sheet is also there with you. I have also given you last year questions. Try those questions and you will see. You have to understand beta. Sometimes it is important to understand what to leave rather than what to do. So collision in 2 dimensions, you can just leave, because I won't be able to justify it. Okay. So on that note, in the next class, we'll be doing some questions on work power energy and circular motion. I've already sent you a sheet. Do have a read, and we will continue in the next class with circular motion and work power energy. So it's a wrap from my end. If you have any doubts, anything that you want to ask, you can ask. Else it's a bye-bye from my end. Take care. Stay happy.